UTRGV.
All right, since I know this next presenter is going to have a great presentation for us and there's going to be a lot of questions, I don't want to take any more of her time. I'd like to introduce Angelica Urbina. She is a faculty member in the Department of Physician Assistant at UTRGV. And I will let her give a more detailed introduction of herself because I don't want to miss anything. I've been known to do that. So, Ms. Urbina, welcome, thank you, and the floor is yours. You can share your screen, and we look forward to a great presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here to be able to tell you a little bit about our program. I'm a huge advocate of trying to get word out there about the physician assistant department. Many do not know much about what the PA profession is, so I am glad to be here with you. So let's go forward with this presentation here. Here's a list of some of our key faculty and staff in the department. And let me tell you a little bit about our profession before I jump into prerequisites and what the program looks like and specifics. Let me tell you a little bit about what a PA is. So the physician assistant is basically we're state licensed and we're also nationally certified. And we have a role that's very similar to that of a physician. We can't do everything a physician can do. For example, surgery, we can't perform surgeries on our own in the OR, but we can definitely assist. But there are a little bit different, there are some differences in our roles. But we do, in the clinic setting, we do have a very similar role. So I can tell you that we can take patient histories. So we'll sit down with the patient, we'll ask them how they're feeling, what symptoms they have, etc. We examine the patients, and then we move forward if we need to order any labs, any testing. And based on those results, then we can diagnose our patient. And based on that diagnosis, then we move forward with whatever treatment we find within our clinical judgment needs to be done. So like I said, in the clinic setting, many of you probably have a PA at your family practice that you see regularly, or even maybe a nurse practitioner. And so we are part of that healthcare team, and I'm very proud of our profession. So let's move on. And just in summary, we are located within UTRGV there in Edinburgh, and we primarily serve Starr County, Hidalgo County, Willacy, and Cameron. And our goal, our mission, is to provide an innovative, advanced medical education to our students who we want to then transform healthcare delivery within South Texas. Okay, so what the program looks like, it's about a 2.5-year program, 28 months, which equals about 9 semesters. The first year is what's called the didactic year. During the didactic year, students are spending most of their time in lecture, most of their time in class. And sorry, let me back up just a little bit. This is a master's degree program. So this would be once the students already have a bachelor's degree, this is, they could move on to get their master's in PA studies. Okay, so back to this, I'm sorry. So didactic year, they spend most of their time in lecture, in class, and they take lots of exams, and they do a lot of group work because we do what's called team-based learning. And so they spend a lot of time in certain groups that are put together at the beginning of their program. The clinical year is the second year, and they spend all year in rotations. Those rotations are off here to the side. So they get a little taste of each of these fields, which are the major fields in healthcare. So they get a taste of this, and that way when they do graduate, they can kind of have an idea of an area they might want to work in. And then the capstone semester is the last semester of their PA schooling, and they basically spend all semester usually in one location. And I'm just going to take a minute here just to glance at the chat, just to see if we have any questions pertinent to this really quickly before I continue. Okay, so I think we're good. All right, so let's go back to our PowerPoint here. Okay, so as far as entrance requirements, like I said, a bachelor's degree is required. And during the cycle, there are certain things that need to be done by September 1st. Of those being the prerequisites have to be completed, a CASPA application, and the graduate college application. So all of those items have to be done by September 1st of the year that the students are applying for. Other requirements are that their GPA has to be above a 3.0. Unless they have a master's degree already, then if their master's degree is above a 3.0, then that kind of that's the exception to having an undergraduate GPA above a 3.0. And then the last requirement are 15 hours of US coursework within the last 10 years. You'll notice off to the side here we have some recommended and other requirements here. These are not absolute requirements, so if they don't have any of this, it's fine. But these are definitely recommended because this gets their feet wet. This gets, for example, shadowing, gets some exposure. It allows the students to know if this is something they would like to do. So we definitely recommend some of these here off to the side. Okay, and those prerequisites in the previous slide that said they have to be completed by September 1st. These are those. Okay, so you'll notice science heavy. So biology, anatomy, chemistry, and then we have statistics and psychology. So all of these have to be completed by September 1st of the year that they are applying for. From our website, from the PA department website, there is this little checklist that comes in very handy because it has all the requirements, and then the student can just go down the list and see what they have completed, what is already.
Good morning, Ms. Hughes. This is Esme with the School of Medicine. Hey, I'm really excited. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. How are you?
Okay, so like I was saying, they can just go down this list and mark off the items that are already completed and those that are incomplete. That way they can work on those incomplete items. And I can't, let's see if I move this. Okay, so if we go down this list, it's basically the same items we saw on one of those previous slides. So the prerequisites are here on top, the GPA requirements, the applications, which are the CASPA application as well as the graduate college application, transcripts, letters of recommendation, and lastly that they need their bachelor's degree and a minimum of 15 US course hours within the last 10 years. Okay, and I see that there is a question in the chat. What I'll go ahead and do is I'll go through the presentation and then I'll take a look at the chat and answer all those questions at the end. Okay, so as you noticed in one of those previous slides, we do recommend patient care experience, shadowing, and so forth. So of that, when you see that term patient care experience, you'll notice here we have patient care fields and then we have not patient care. So there are certain things that are not considered patient care under that patient care umbrella, but they may still be recommended. For example, the shadowing is definitely still recommended for the students to get that exposure, get their feet wet, and get their eyes open as far as what the profession is. Okay, and then as far as the patient care, these would fall under that umbrella. Okay, so the PA profession was ranked as third in 2020 with a median salary of about $108,000. And this depends a lot on the site the PA practices. So pay may be a little bit different dependent on whether they work in a clinic, whether they work in a hospital, whether they work in an ER setting. So salary can change a little bit. And lastly, something else I want to point out here is that the demand for PAs is increasing and is expected to increase by 31% by 2028, creating about 37,000 new jobs. So that's pretty awesome. Tips for success. We do recommend for students to work on their GPAs to try and have that competitive GPA because they are the GPAs are looked at very highly. Course success is another biggie. So we do recommend for students to try not to have any repeats, any drops or withdrawals from their courses. And then we do recommend for them to have any, if they have any licenses, certifications, awards, honors, scholarships. This all looks wonderful. And then lastly on this list is communication skills. So part of the application process for the PA master's degree is that the students have an interview. And so we do like for the students to be well prepared, for them to have some exposure, have some practice in mock interviews. That way they can shine in those interviews. Here are some links. Okay, a link to the graduate college website, a link to the PA website, and then CASPA. So you've heard me mention CASPA a couple of times already. So CASPA is where the students go and put in their application information for our program. So here is the link for that website. TAPA, so this is Texas Academy of Physician Assistants. This is the website. And then this is a link that you can also find from our website, from the PA department website, and this is FAQs. So if you or any students have any questions, they can go here first and see if these have already been answered on here. And if they don't find their question and answer on here, then they can definitely email one of us and we'll gladly answer their question. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Pact. You may have heard about Pact already. So I want to talk a little bit about Pact, and then I'll answer some questions. So Pact is an early assurance program into our master's program. And so you may have heard about this because this seems to be more, well, it is more geared towards high school students. So this may be more in your ball game. But definitely, of course, the master's program is great for you to be aware of, so that way you're already talking to your students about. But this is for high school graduates, so whether they're junior graduates or senior graduates, both are eligible. And what happens is that they apply as high school graduates or during their last year of high school, and then they have that early assurance into the master's program in 4 years. So every year we will be accepting up to 10 applicants. And for example, this is for, I changed these dates to be for next year. So for example, next year they will apply by spring 2021, and they will start in the fall of 2021 with their undergraduate studies. And then in 2025, they will be starting their master's degree in PA studies. So this is wonderful for students that you know are very interested into the medical profession. Very interested into specifically for physician assistant, and that way they already have their foot in the door. They already, of course, they need to maintain specific requirements during their undergraduate studies, but they already have their foot in the door, and as long as they maintain all of that, then they have a seat waiting for them in the master's program once they have their bachelor's degree. Students that are eligible are basically anyone who attend any high school within these counties. And other application criteria. So the first one we already mentioned. Second is that they come in as first-year students, so basically as high school graduates. That they are also accepted and officially enrolled into the Honors College. That they submit their letters of recommendation. That they score well on their SAT or ACT, that they're ranked top 5% of their high school or with a minimum of 3.7 GPA. And then here's a link to our website that can also be found here for more information. And so this is great for, I would recommend that students who start their last year of high school start looking at this if they're interested, start keeping an eye on the website to get information on how and when to apply. And you can take down my email. So this is me down here, the third one. I am the Pact program coordinator. So you can take down the Pact email or my personal email with UTRGV, and you can shoot me any emails that you think of along the way. But now let's turn to the chat. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Go. All right, so I'm looking at the chat here. So I'm going to go back a little bit. I see that there's a question. I heard that it's very hard to get into this program because there's a long waiting list and it is competitive. What should a high school student do to stand out for this program? So yes, it is very competitive. We do have hundreds of students apply every year. And so yes, GPA is very important. So like we mentioned in some of the previous slides, tips for success are have that competitive GPA, have those things that make you stand out. So not only the good grades, the great things that look great on paper, but then also extras. So this is kind of where the shadowing comes in, kind of where the patient care experience comes in, because if you have those things, that also looks wonderful in comparison to someone who doesn't have any of that. So sometimes when it comes down to it, we might have 2 applicants that we're looking at and for that last seat. And when we're looking at those 2 applicants, we might have to start looking at things like patient care and shadowing, because there might be someone, as far as grades and things like that, they might be exactly the same. So that's where that comes into play. But like I said earlier, it's not a requirement. It's just those are extras. Okay, next question. What do they need to apply for Pact? Is there a list of requirements? So as far as Pact, the requirements were those items in that application criteria slide that had that they have to be in the honors college, that they have to have good SAT and ACT scores, that their GPA has to be above a 3.7, their high school GPA, that being, and then the top 5% ranking. So those are the requirements for Pact. Next question says, could they enter to the master's program before the 4 years? Okay, great question. Yes, we are actually looking into this. So we have, this past year, we have accepted our first group of Pact, our first cohort of Pact students. And we already see that a lot of them have many college hours from high school. So it is very likely that they could potentially start their master's program, say, in 3 years instead of the 4. And so we're looking at that for Pact, and that definitely is something that we are considering and we want to move forward with. So yes, that is possible. Next question says, do the students need to have a particular bachelor's degree? No, great question. No, actually, bachelor's degree can be in anything. So if they like engineering, for example, they could do a bachelor's degree in a similar field. They could do rehab. They could do political science, history, psychology. Bachelor's degree can be anything as long as they have all the prerequisites. Okay. Next question. Great questions. Thank you so much. And if I'm going too fast, please stop me. If you have a question that goes with something I'm speaking of, please feel free to stop me and ask me to elaborate. That's not a problem. Okay, next question here. Good morning. For Pact, how can we prepare our students to be a competitive applicant? What courses should we offer? So I'm assuming this is for high school? Yes? Okay. So in high school, as far as courses, I would say the best thing to recommend would be the sciences. So if they enjoy sciences, then get any exposure that they can to sciences. If there were to be some sort of pre-PA program that they could get into as high school students, that would be wonderful. I don't know that there is, but there definitely is in undergrad. There's a pre-PA society once they get into college. But as far as coursework, I can't stress enough the sciences. So if they're interested in, and this goes for any medical profession, if they're interested in the medical field, in whatever field it may be, I would start recommending the sciences. So not just taking the basic science courses, but taking those AP science courses to get that more extensive coursework and more extensive knowledge. And that'll definitely help them throughout undergraduate and then into our program. Okay, and as far as being competitive, it's just keeping their grades up, keeping their grades up, and the other items that we spoke about, having competitive for the Pact program specifically, having competitive SAT, ACT scores, having a good ranking, and those kinds of things. Okay, next question. Do you have a sequence of courses for the bachelor's degree so they can later enter the master's program? No, I don't have a full degree plan because it would be dependent on what bachelor's they are going for. So if they're going for something, for example, maybe political science or history, their degree plan might be more history focused, more political science based, versus if someone is going into a bachelor's degree in biology, then it'll be more science heavy. So as far as a breakdown in degree plans, I don't have that. But if they look at that checklist that I had on the PowerPoint slide, that'll help them. So they can take a look at their degree plan in whatever degree they are getting, and then basically just add in their prerequisites. So a lot of times there's a Bachelor's of Arts and then there's a Bachelor of Science. So say they're getting a degree in history, they can maybe get their degree with a Bachelor of Science in history, and that way they can throw in their prerequisites, their chemistries, their biologies, and their anatomy and physiology. So that's something I would recommend. Or as entering freshmen as undergrad, they could go to an advisor and make sure and plan out their degree plan to still be able to get the degree they want, and then to add in their prerequisites into their plan. Okay, so let me see, where did I leave off? Okay, next question. If one of the 10 students leaves Pact, is there a waitlist available for other students to fill in the spot? I have heard that it is more beneficial for students to enter the PA program after they receive a master's degree. Is there any truth? Okay, sorry. So there's two questions there. So the first one was, if one of the 10 student leaves Pact, is there a waitlist available for other students to fill in the spot? That's a great question, and honestly, I don't think I have an exact answer for that question. Being that this is our first year, we haven't had that come up yet. So if that were to come up, then it would be something we would have to address and formulate a plan for. So I think it's very possible that if someone were, like your question, if someone were to leave their Pact spot, that we might have to fill that with someone on the wait list. So I want to say yes, but I can't say 100%. So I will have to get a better answer for that for next year for sure. But thank you for that question. That makes us think and look ahead for the future years. Okay, next question from that same person, from Mr. Flores. I have heard that it is more beneficial for students to enter the PA program after they receive a master's degree. So as far as the master's degree component, sometimes it's recommended to go forward with the master's degree if someone doesn't have a competitive GPA. So it's not, it's, as far as your question, you're asking if there's any truth to that statement. So it's not exactly where we tell everybody to get a master's degree. It's for those that maybe need a more competitive application. So if their application is lacking, and there's many reasons why an application can lack, but the major one is going to be GPA. So if they don't have that competitive GPA, then we do sometimes recommend that they go back and get a master's degree to help their GPA. And then if they get that, for example, say their GPA, their undergraduate GPA is a 2.9, or say they're barely making it with a 3.0, then they're not going to be as competitive as those that have a 4.0 GPA. And we do have a few that come in with a 4.0 GPA. So those students are the ones that we might recommend, okay, go back. If this is truly what you want, then go back and either take some of those courses over to improve your GPA, or go and get a master's degree. So that way, remember I mentioned earlier that that's the exception for students that don't have that minimum requirement of a 3.0. If they have above if they're able to fix that with the master's degree GPA, then that kind of makes that exception. Does that make sense? I hope I'm explaining myself. Okay, so like I said, let me just reiterate, we don't tell everybody to go get a master's degree, but we do, that is one of the ways to make your application more competitive when they don't have a great GPA, or when there's an area of their application that that is not as competitive as, say, the other 200 students we have applying, or other 300 students. The next question is, with COVID-19, what impact will this have on inability to have clinical observation experience? So, great question. Right now, we do have a little bit of, that is a little bit of an obstacle at this current time, being that hospitals and certain clinics are having, it's really hard out there. So right now, we do see that it's an issue, but moving forward, when all of this gets resolved and there is a plan, a better plan in place, or a vaccine for COVID-19, we are being optimistic, and we are hoping that this will all fix our clinical obstacle. So to better answer your question, yes, right now, currently, that is a problem. But moving forward, we hope that it no longer is a problem, and we have no issues sending students to rotations, being that that is a requirement for their graduation. They have to be able to complete those rotations. So we can't graduate our students without that, that second year of clinical experience and their last capstone semester. So fingers crossed. I have faith in our healthcare community and research teams out there that they will find a better plan for this COVID-19 situation. Okay, I'm moving on to the next question. Do students with college course credits when applying have an advantage over those that do not? Give me 1 second. Let me just think about this question. And you're talking about Pact. Yes, it says for Pact specifically. Okay. I would say not necessarily. It's not a requirement, so it's not absolute. But I would say if they have them and they look great, say they have all A's from their college courses, that could definitely give them a leg up to where it looks great. They're showing that they would be great college students. So that allows us to put more trust in those students that they're going to do well in their undergraduate, and they'll be ready for the master's program. Does that make sense? So in that way, I would say yes, maybe it gives them a tiny bit of a leg up if they are being compared to others that don't have any of those college hours, or say they do have college hours, but their grades are, say, C's on their college courses. That would not look great. The next question here, if the students complete and pass the higher level dual enrollment science classes in high school, will the students need to retake them at the university level? I am not quite sure how this works. I know that when they sit with an advisor with all those dual enrollment courses that they take in high school, I know the advisors can tell them these count for your college hours, and they can tell them what exactly is transferred over, but I don't know 100%. So I would say if they do have all those science classes, I would say to meet with an advisor their freshman year of college to get all that ironed out. And if there's someone on here that has an answer to that question, please feel free to jump right in, because yes,
Ms. Urbina, I'm so sorry. This is Esme. I'm with the School of Medicine. The typical advice has been that if a student comes in with, for instance, dual enrollment hours in the sciences, and I think we had a very brief discussion on this yesterday, the typical word of advice has been for the student, in order to best prepare and be content ready for the level of classes that they'll be delving into, is to retake. However, that said, I would strongly urge the instructor who is asking this question to please email Dr. Lettingham. He's more up to date on the courses and the requirements and this sort of this exact sort of subject. And so I would really ask that you contact Dr. Lettingham directly. I think he posted his email yesterday. Isela, am I correct that his contact information is available for all the participants today? His email address? Isela, are you there? Or Dr. Alvarado?
We can, Esmeralda, this is Dr. Valdez. We can place
Hi,
it.
Dr. Valdez.
Hi.
Okay.
We can place it right here in the chat box and they can get it from there. That'll be.
I will do so immediately. I will do so right now.
Let me kind of piggyback on what Esmeralda was saying. It is very particular per department, per discipline, whether some of these dual credits will be accepted because of the fact that some of the sciences require higher level training. So it depends on how the dual credit came about and whether it was significantly challenging to the student. They might do well in it, but I don't know if it's as challenging as what's being offered at a higher rigor of study in the university. So that's where we're really talking to an advisor, a pre-health advisor, and actually beyond that to the department, educational piece, so they can work with you beforehand so that you're not taking classes or courses that might not count. So just food for thought.
Thank you so much for that help. So as you all know, Pact is brand new. This is the first year. So some of these questions are new to me. So next year I'll have better answers for sure. But thank you so much for these questions because they're, I'll jot them down and remember them next year. Okay, so, and you know what Esmeralda and Ms. Valdez were saying, it's so true because a lot of times they might not feel prepared to go into the college coursework. So maybe a science course in high school, even though it's dual enrollment, may not be the same as if they were to take it in the undergraduate setting. So like they were saying, if that were to be the case, then it would probably be best that they do retake it. That way they have more of that understanding and a better comprehension to be ready for the rigor that they're going to face in the master's program. Because our first year, the didactic year of PA school is very rigorous, and you will hear from our students that they are studying nonstop. They tell, a lot of times they say they don't have lives. They barely see their families sometimes, and they're recommended not to work during the PA schooling because it's just so hard to keep up with the PA curriculum, first of all, to be able to handle a job on the side. So they are recommended not to have any extracurriculars or jobs on the side and just to focus on their master's degree curriculum. And so that's where it would help if they do have a better understanding of the science background. So thank you so much for that help.
Just real quick, also, I included Mr. Frank Ambris's email on there as well. I'm sure that he and Dr. Lettingham can provide some additional information because they have dealt with this before. It could be a case by case. It could be something that the program decides in a general sense, but they should be able to help you. Thanks again.
Okay, and here, okay, so the next question. Is the MCAT exam a requirement for this program? No, it's not. The MCAT is specific to medical school. So for us, for PA school, I believe just under the graduate college application, a GRE is required. I believe this year is being waived, but otherwise it is required under the graduate college application. And the next question. If someone has graduated CLS, is that clinical lab science, and has been working for 10 years already, can this person still apply for the PA program? So, so yes, they can apply. They would probably just need to take some prerequisites if they don't have all those prerequisite courses. And the other thing is ensuring that they have the 15-hour coursework within the last 10 years. So those two things, often we do get people who, applicants who have been working, say, as teachers for several years or in another profession, and then they decide, you know what, I want to be a PA now. So those are usually the two that require them to take a step back, is getting their prerequisites and making sure they have coursework within the last 10 years, and then they're good to go. They can apply and go through with the application process. Okay, do you accept the UT Onramps dual credit courses? I'm not familiar with the name Onramps. Is that just a specific name for dual credit courses? I'm sorry,
I can
don't
answer that. This is
Okay.
Claudia Gutierrez with Region 1. Onramps is a advanced high school dual credit associated only with University of Texas at Austin. And it is a way for students to get dual credit through them it's a dual credit class, but it's associated with University of Texas at Austin. Well, I didn't hear the specific question about Onramps.
The question was, do you accept the UT Onramps dual credit courses?
I think we're going to have to look back. Sandra, if you can send an email to Isela and myself and Dr. Alvarado, we can check into that and get back with you on that.
So I believe this goes back to the previous question about dual enrollment classes in high school. And so I believe they were mentioning to email a few people, possibly Dr. Lettingham, on those courses. But as far as what has been mentioned, it looks like they are transferable. They will be counted. The problem would be is if the student is ready based on those courses, if that prepared them enough for the master's program, being that our program is very science heavy. So we do want them to have the best comprehension of anatomy, of biology, of chemistry, and all those main courses. That way to better prepare them for the master's program.
Yeah, Sandra, I see your question and I'll follow up and get back with you on that. Thank you.
And just another note, hi, I'm Isela, Region 1. On Onramps, it is an opportunity for the students to receive dual credit through the University of Texas at Austin by a professor from UT Austin. It is just done in conjunction with a high school teacher. So if the student decides that they will accept the credit, because they have an option at the end of the semester either to accept the credit or deny it, but still stay in the course, then that course is a UT Austin course, and they do create a transcript for that student. So it is a college course given by a UT professor with the assistance of the high school teacher. So that's a little more information.
This is Dr. Valdez, yes, and I would, that's why I think the personalization of looking at and having an advisor, because there's different ways to offer dual credit. If it's within, say, a major university like this, then the likelihood that it is a higher level, kind of more intense type of course, and therefore prepare the student, because it's about the preparation of the student. It's not just the credit. It's also about, are they well prepared to move forward into, a scientific type of career. And so I think that's where the individuality of that student and the advisor and the program can best figure that one out. Because it would not be the same thing if they were an English major or whatever. That would not apply. So just FYI, and with Pact and in medical school, I'm in the School of Medicine, by the way, it really, you can graduate with any degree, but you have to have the fundamentals, because the intensity of that first and second year are it's pretty daunting for individuals if they're not properly prepared. So again, that needs to be a very individual discussion with the student, the mentor, the counselors, and the discipline-specific professors. Thank you.
I echo what Dr. Valdez said. I know a little earlier we were discussing, this is Esme, by the way, I work with Dr. Valdez's team. When it comes to the advisors, when your students are getting ready to come on the campus, and I know the majority of you already know this, but when they're coming in specifically to a program of study like this, like the PA program or like the nursing program, it's best to seek out on either on the website or the contacts you'll be making this week, and email them directly your questions, because they would be better versed at knowing how to advise the students specifically when it comes to dual enrollment content they may have taken and what their requirements are in their major. While our advisors at the undergraduate level are well prepared, it's usually in a general sense, and the more specific information that your kids are going to need, your students, it's going to come from the department people. So I echo exactly what Dr. Valdez said. And Claudia, that's amazing. I had no idea about this new dual enrollment program with UT. That's amazing. And that kid would be prepared for sure.
Okay, thank you so much for all that clarification. We have some more questions on here. The next question is, should a high school student take an AP science course for the rigorous coursework over a college level science course for its laboratory practice and setting? So you're comparing one to the other, a high school student, an AP science course versus a college level science course for its laboratory practice. That's what I'm understanding from this question. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But it looks like you're asking if it would be better to take an AP science course versus a college level science course. And I would say it doesn't hurt to do both. So if they're high school seniors and they're taking all these AP classes, that's wonderful. And then when they get to being undergraduate students, then it would be great to take all those sciences for the degree plan and for the prerequisites if they're interested in the PA program. And like we've already mentioned before, the experience might be a little bit different. The rigor might definitely be different from a high school science course versus undergraduate, definitely. Okay, next question. What is the success rate of those with a Bachelor of Science in Sciences versus a Bachelor of Science in another discipline? I don't know that it's much different, actually. We have, for example, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology, and a lot of our students, they come from all sorts of different backgrounds. So I don't think it's dependent on being a science major. I mean, it helps because they will have the knowledge, they will have the comprehension, but just the same, we could have someone with a history degree who really took the time and really focused when they were taking the prerequisites and understood all the material. So I think it's one of those things where it's very comparable as far as the success rate between someone with a science degree versus a non-science degree. So I haven't seen anything in our program to where we say that the success rate is much different for science majors. I could see it helping, but not necessarily a major difference in success rate. Okay, next question. Okay, just a clarification, you mentioned 15-hour college coursework within the last 10 years. From a previous meeting I attended, I was informed it was within the last 5 years. Which info is more up to date? The more up to date one is the one from today, the 10 years. This has actually been changed. So, and I'll share my screen just to show that really quickly. I'll go back to that slide. Okay, so this slide right here, this is more up to date, 15 hours within the last 10 years. So this was updated, and it has also been updated on this checklist down here. I know this is really tiny, but this is an updated checklist that shows that it's now 10 years versus 5 years. Thank you for bringing that up. That way, if anyone else had that same question, they are also aware that it is now 10 years versus the 5 years it was before. And I know that there were several emails posted in the chat, so let me give you one more, which is our our program admission coordinator. So Dr. Keith Joseph, he's our admission coordinator for the master's program. So you might want to, oh, you know what, this is incorrect here. I guess I forgot to update that one. Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. I updated the name and didn't update the email. But it should be keith.joseph@UTRGV. So disregard this email right here. But you can still email pad@utrgv.edu or keith.joseph@utrgv.edu. And he's our admission coordinator for specific questions to the master's program, or like I said, myself, the Pact program coordinator. This is the Pact email, and this is my email right here. And I can put these down in the chat. That way when these slides come down, if you didn't get a chance to write them down, I'll put them in the chat and also put Dr. Keith Joseph's email as well. Okay, so let me look back at the chat. I think we're up to date on the chat questions. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Adela Valdez, for Keith Joseph's email. There it is in the chat. And let me stop sharing here. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. So if anyone else thinks of any questions, please jump right in. And while I wait for another question, I'm going to write my email here. There's a question here. Do the prerequisites need to be completed within the last 10 years? I believe the answer to that is no. I think the 15 coursework hours can be in any, it usually ends up that they're the prerequisites, but it doesn't have to be, being that that's a separate requirement. So to answer your question, no, it doesn't have to be prerequisites. It can be any US coursework. Any other questions?
Erica Alvarez has a question. Ms. Urbina, she's asking, are the prerequisites set in stone or can other advanced courses sub them?
Oh, okay. So yes, there are some subs allowed. So I can't, like, for example, I think statistics, it could be like intro to statistics, and there might be others, the psychology, intro to psychology or general psychology. So there are a few that can sub, but of course they would be allowed by the university. So it can't be something totally out of the field. It's something usually related or something very similar.
I'm not sure if you answered this one, but I think Dr. Tamez with the School of Nursing had a question. What is the success rate of those with a BS in sciences versus a BS in another discipline?
Yes, I answered that one. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't have like 100% answer on that. But as far as what I've seen in the past years that I've been with the department, it's not where we say that the success rate of someone with a science degree is much higher. Okay. But I mean, it definitely helps, but it's not that we necessarily see that only the ones that have science degrees do well.
I'd like to add, this is Dr. Valdez. One of the reasons that our School of Medicine uses holistic review, and that is looking at the entire individual, not just the metrics, is because we do want a broad breadth of individuals who have come from different disciplines and experiences. And that adds really richness to the graduate at that time. And more importantly, it's very an important component in addressing the needs of our community. What I have found, and a lot of research, and at least for medical school, is that the first year or so for those non-science majors, they do struggle more. Obviously, they have trouble with some of the sciences, so they're not they're not as quick on it, but they're also very persistent and they do very well. When they finish those basic science 2 years, then they just bloom and flourish. So they're, you know, the more that they're into the arts, for example, music, communications, and many other things, then they add then a different focus to how they think and do, and it's just a very, very diverse, very rich, I think, addition for people that are non-science majors. The only thing I would ask that people going in really during their undergraduate and even in high school to do the science courses nonetheless and do the rigor nonetheless, so that when they're there, they're not as daunting for them. But to stay, you know, of course, my own daughter is an art major, and she's now medical director of an HIV clinic. And she also is a social science. She had double major in social science and art. And so I think she brings, you know, obviously a different perspective than I do, that I was just a nerd in science. So again, I think the richness comes from diversity.
Thank you. That is so true. Yes, they do bring a lot to the table when they're not necessarily, you know, when they have that holistic. And we do a holistic review as well with the PA department. We have integrated that a few years back. And so with our applicant review, we try and look at everything, not just GPAs. Although that does count a lot, it's not the only thing we look at, definitely. Okay, any other questions? We have had some wonderful questions this morning, and thank you for, some of you are making me think, but I'll be better prepared next year, so thank you very much for your questions. And please, I know that, I guess I can make a special request at this time, since I don't see any other questions coming in. Please help us spread the word to your students, because I did do some health fairs this past spring when we were still allowed in the schools before COVID. We did some health fairs career fairs with the high schools, and I noticed that a lot of students didn't know what a PA is, and that's very common. I think that's very common. That's something common we find, that students don't know what a PA is. They know what a nurse is, they know what a doctor is, but they don't know what a PA is. So please help us just share information with them and let them know that there are other fields out there. There's nurse practitioners as well. And this might change their mind as to what career they want to go into for their future.
Thank you so much, Ms. Urbina, for all of that wonderful information. And I know that a lot of the students that we work with often have a lot of questions regarding the PA program, more surrounded around, can they go into the PA program after high school? What can they do in high school? And because the program is a little bit unique in that they need to have already obtained their bachelor's degree, it's a little different than the other HealthWave programs. One of the things that I just want to stress to the school districts is that it seems that this is the first time that the PA program has the early admissions from high school. So that's something definitely to promote to your students and take advantage of, because if the student is able to get into this program out of high school and they maintain their GPA, it seems that they won't have to go through the competition of being selected for a spot after they finish their bachelor's degree, which is something that before I know you didn't have, because I often asked about what are you guys doing for high schools for some of the students that are interested in that. So that's just something to keep in mind for the high schools. I think the fact that they guarantee a spot into the program, and they can do that after a student graduates high school, is something that we have been waiting for, certainly because a lot of the students that are looking into the PA program are looking outside of this region because there isn't really availability in the region. But if you have a top 5%, you know, top student that really wants to be a PA and can be guaranteed a position if they maintain their grades, this is definitely a great selling point for them to stay here in this region and keep the talent local. So thank you so much for all of that information, and thank you for giving us all the contact information as well. I know that sometimes we have some questions afterwards, so what we'll do is our team will gather any questions that may have been pending, and we will send them over to you or to Dr. Lettingham, and make sure that, you know, we get them in a timely manner for you. But again, I think that this was a very informative presentation and some great options for our students.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.